So you might be dealing with some confusion as you are waking up on the spiritual path, and I want to bring you some clarifications in this confusion because I know that I would have loved a video like this when I was going through my beginning stages or my mid stages of my spiritual awakening. Now, we are always awakening, right? Like, this is a never-ending process, but that does not mean that you can get experience through time, absolutely, and you can gain greater and greater discernment through time. So I also want to talk about what Kundalini awakening is and what exactly is the difference between spiritual awakening and Kundalini awakening. Well, you can think of Kundalini awakening as the ancestral energy that lays dormant within you being expressed for perhaps the first time in your biological existence. And what exactly does that mean? It means that throughout time, you have had dormant DNA stored up in your body, where if you expose yourself to certain kinds of situations or things, you wake up certain parts of your mind, your body, and your soul that weren't exactly there before. Now, how is that possible? What exactly does that mean, dormant DNA? Well, as far as I can tell, as far as the science behind it goes, it's that the dormant DNA that you are awakening on the spiritual path is all of the experiences of your ancestors conglomerated into your biology. Is it not the case that our biology is far more advanced and this highly sophisticated chemical reaction that is the body is so much smarter than the mind? Is that not the case? I think it is the case. I mean, how else would what you eat and what you do in your life reflect and change in accordance to what you consume and what you do? There's just no other way to describe that kind of sensation and feeling. So there's going to be a lot of things that are happening as you awaken this DNA that is dormant. And one of the things that first happened when my Kundalini was awakened. Now, this is another thing. Not everybody's Kundalini is going to awaken. You may become spiritually awakened, but you may also not ever experience the full Kundalini awakening. However, I do think that if you go far enough on the spiritual path, you are bound to awaken to the Kundalini experience if you're open to it and if you're highly intuitive. I've always been a highly intuitive person, but it was almost like I was so involved in my extroverted feeling of the situations that I never got to really experience my internal feelings of the situation and my introverted feelings. I was really good at reading the emotions of other people, but never really myself. And so, in fact, the Kundalini experience helped me awaken to my own feelings even more at a deeper level. And my ability to see people and what they were feeling and thinking emotionally, and this clairvoyance that started to arise out of the ashes of this experience became more and more powerful every day. So one of the things that might happen on your Kundalini awakening is that you experience a lot of physical symptoms. You may experience these random sweats in the middle of the night. You may experience heat or coldness on certain sensations of your body, particularly the crown of the head, the third eye, the throat here, the middle of your chest, your stomach right above your belly button, right below your belly button, or at I'll just say it, your anus, or at your root tailbone, at the very tip of your tailbone there. And so you might also be experiencing heat or any kind of weird sensations all along your spine, or any kind of tingling across your body that you may not have ever felt before. And it doesn't really feel as though it's a physical sensation. You can sense that this is something that is not quite physical. Like, yes, you can feel it it's in your body, but something is like, you may get these sweats that come out of nowhere and you're like, this isn't like, I'm not nervous about anything. I'm not anxious. Why am I getting these sweats? Like, there's just no reason for it. But these are all very minor symptoms. One of the bigger things that you will experience if you have the Kundalini Awakening is a sensation of this huge torrent of energy being rippled from the base of your spine all the way to your crown. And one of the things that was weirdest that happened to me was, I would say this was about maybe 6 to 12 months into my Kundalini Awakening. And my Kundalini Awakening happened a few years ago after I had a dream. If you want to know more about that, I have a video on that. And perhaps I'll put a link in the description below if I remembered. But if I don't, you can search just Thaddeus Mitchell Kundalini and it'll pop up for sure. But in this experience following the dream, there was a sensation that I had about 6 to 12 months later where I woke up and it was as if this lava of love was being poured on my spine. And I woke up and I was like shaking like a snake. And I didn't understand exactly what was happening. Like, I'd heard about the chakras at this point. I'd heard about all the kinds of mysterious things that you might experience during a spiritual awakening, but I'd never heard about this. I'd never ever heard about this. And I thought something was wild that was happening to me. I figured, you know what? I must be losing my mind. I must be. Even though I feel more sane than I ever have in my life, the things that I'm experiencing are not normal. Like, they're just not normal. From what I've heard about other people. And like, there's no way people can have this kind of experience and not talk about it. That's the way that I viewed it at the time. And so I woke up and I was just in this extreme heat. And even now I can think about it and it brings me kind of a shiver down my spine because of the intensity. But it was as if this lava of love was being poured from the base of my spine all the way to the tip of my skull. And it was just this pure heat. And it was like it was burning all of these excess emotions that I didn't need anymore. And, you know, you might be thinking to yourself along the spiritual path, as I did, was, I don't know if I can make it through this anymore. Like, I don't know if I can take the dissolution of my ego. I don't know if I can take the dissolution of reality of what I perceived it to be. This is too much. This is too much. And I kept going, though, because I knew that I would be in bigger pain and suffering if I didn't. And it was like, I'm already down this huge rabbit hole. I might as well see how deep it goes. Like in The Matrix, where Morpheus says to Neo, you know, take this pill and see how far the rabbit hole goes. That was my mentality. And so then you start to look around you after these kinds of experiences and you start to awaken to your deeper, more higher self. And you start to feel as though you've been found. And yet, when you look around, you feel more lost around people. That was one of the strangest things that I experienced, was that feeling of being found and yet even more so lost among the universe. Like, I just had found myself on this planet, in this body. Like, whoa, I'm in a human body. like the recognition and the self-realization of that hit me hard along these points. And you'll go through certain kinds of, I guess you could call them stages of awakening. And you have to go through certain kinds of cycles and burn certain kinds of cycles in order to get to a certain point. But when you have that feeling of being found and yet you seem lost in the universe, and yet at the same time in that lost feeling, you feel closer to who you are more so than you've ever been before. And you know that you're on to something. You just can't really see where you're going. But that's kind of the point. And then you look around and you keep seeing how people are making these terrible decisions, like going into more debt, or just you're starting to see. This was about 2 years ago, finally, when I realized that I needed to get my health in good order and good shape. Was like I figured that my spiritual body or my spiritualness was completely separate from my body. And that is absolutely not the case. Your spirit will not survive without the body, and your body will not survive without the spirit. However, your spirit can, or your body can break, but your spirit can live on. But in order for your spirit to live on, you have to realize your spirit in your body. And so when you look at these people making these kinds of decisions that lead them further and further into the world and not into a greater wholesome spiritual longevity and spiritual wholeness, you start to grow in compassion, and you start to see things for what they really are, and you just see things as it is, for what it really is too. You're not just saying that. You're not just saying, oh, it is what it is. No, you're saying, yeah, that is what it is. And you know it. There's a sense of knowing there. It's not a sense of belief, or it's not an ideology. It's a knowing. And you begin to also realize that as you go on in the spiritual path, you may have more dreams. You may have more vivid nightmares as well. But you also accept the fact that you live through those nightmares so that you can achieve your dreams later on down the road. You realize that these are all part of the polarities of life. You realize that life is just the same as death. Life is just the same as anything else. There's pros and cons, and nature can be very brutal. You know, there's some cold, hard truths to reality, and there's not much we can do about those cold, hard truths except accept them. There's going to be a lot of trials on your road, and you're going to have to just deal with it. But one of the biggest things about the Kundalini experience is that you have to realize that you're unblocking and unlocking years and years of this stored up energy that has not been addressed. So what's going to happen when you start to address it? Well, shit's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of stuff going wrong in your life. And this happens to almost everybody that I have talked to on the spiritual path, and that I know that has been on the spiritual path in the past, like in history. For example, Buddha. What happened to Buddha before his awakening, before he was enlightened? Well, what happened is he saw death, he saw sickness, he saw all of these terrible things that his father never exposed him to, because when he was born, there was a prophecy that he would become either a great king like his father, or he would become one of the greatest sages or influencers of spiritual practices of all time. And his father wanted him to be a great king. So the catch in the prophecy was, at least according to the legend or the story or however you want to look at it, was according to the story of Siddhartha, which that was Siddhartha, Buddha's name before he was enlightened, Siddhartha. He was a prince. So what happened to Siddhartha was that in the prophecy, it was said that he would become the king if he never saw the horrors of life before he was an adult or something. And so one day he actually was able to take the carriage out of the palace, and he started to see his people sick, and he started to have compassion, and he didn't realize that there was so much catastrophe in the world. And that's when he started his spiritual practice. And it took Buddha, again, according to the stories that I've read and researched, it took him 7 to 10 years, something like that, of meditation to become fully enlightened. And even when he became fully enlightened, he realized that there was nothing really to realize. You were searching so much and doing so much to search for something that was already right in front of you the whole time. But you have to go through these certain steps in order to get there. You have to go through hell. Literally and figuratively, you have to go through hell to get there. You can't just follow your bliss. Now, I know Joseph Campbell's talked about that, and I respect Joseph Campbell quite a bit. I love his books. I love his work. However, I don't necessarily agree that you should just follow your bliss. I think what he's really trying to say when he says follow your bliss, I think what he's really trying to say is follow your bliss insofar as you can decrease your appetite for worldly things and increase your satisfaction of spiritual wholeness. That's what I think he's actually trying to get at when he says that. And maybe that's the point, is just to his simplicity. But I don't necessarily think that was the case. I've read quite a bit of his work and seen a lot of his work online, and I don't know if that's the case either. But this happened to Carl Jung too, the psychologist. He had to break from Freud. And it was almost like breaking from a father figure or a brother. It was really hard for him, and he actually, he had built his whole life building up his reputation. He had everything he wanted. He had a whole professional life where he was respected internationally as a psychologist. He had everything he could possibly dreamed of, and yet he was still unsatisfied in the soul. And that's when he started to have his awakening. But all of these stories and all of these things about people that you learn in reading about and hearing about their spiritual, I guess you could say, atonement, is that they all have to go through pain of some kind in order to, and learning how to let go and learning to become whole, really, by experiencing anything and everything that they need to experience in order to be whole. Now, they don't repress, but they don't always act on everything that they desire as well. That's a key difference in all the discipline as well, too. So, what am I trying to tell you here exactly with all of these stories? It's that you're going to end up doing what you want to do because you wanted to do it. And there's no other way that you're going to heal on your path of spiritual health and wellness unless you do the things that you actually want to do. However, you should also know and note that doing so may cost you a lot more of repentance, so to speak, down the road. So you can do what you do. You can do what you want to do. But to act on certain things is going to have dire consequences. And make no mistake, you will be judged on your spiritual path by God. I was judged, and I'm still judged to this day. God is the only one that can judge me, though we can make judgments of other people, right? So know that as well. God is the only one that judges you. However, that does not mean that you deserve respect. That does not mean that you deserve anything. You get to act a certain way and you receive that which you put in the work for. It's better to earn than it is to just get. And that's what the whole spiritual path has been about for me, is earning this peace of mind is beyond value and beyond any price anybody can put on anything else. If I had to choose between my peace of mind and, I don't know, just some kind of form of power, like some kind of really big form of power in the hierarchy, I would choose my peace of mind every time. But that does not mean that I'm not interested in power, and that does not mean that I'm not interested in influence. You can still have power and influence and be a very powerful spiritual figure, just like Gandhi. So, one of the other things along your spiritual path that you might begin to see is, let's see, I'm looking through my notes here, making sure I got everything. Yes, you might feel as though, as when the emotions come up from your past, you actually don't really know what to do with them. It's like they've been stored in your body for so long that you don't really know like what to do with them. It's like, I don't know what to do with this energy. That's where creativity comes into play. And so I recommend everybody here, if they're on the spiritual path in any way, shape, or form, create. It doesn't even matter what you create. Because if it pleases God, if it pleases the Creator, then that is what matters. And so your creation can be your form of worship to the universe, to God. And so learning how to create is actually, I guess you could say, learning how to create is a bit of a juxtaposition, but at the same time, you do have to learn how to create, and you have to tap into your emotions. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's where creativity, true creativity, really lies. But I hope this video was useful and insightful. And to anybody out there that is looking for guidance on their spiritual path, please send me a message through email in the link below for a consultation. And if you have any other questions or comments, or if you want to leave a like on the channel or the page or the video, please do so. That is the best way to support this content at this time. And peace be with you. Till next time.